Hi, welcome to episode 5 of Escape to the Light development blog. So recently I released this game at the Wakefield show up in Bradford. It was 3 nights late at night, getting up at 4 in the morning and finishing about midnight. Because finishing stuff is kind of hard, it always takes a bit longer than you think, and I kept finding little bugs. I actually finished about 3 hours before the show to produce this. So we're going to have a quick look at the finished design, and I'll talk you through that. I had to kind of make things consistent. Then we're going to go over things I use for animation checks, old unreleased 80s games. I used inspirations that I have, and I did, and look inside it and a talk through it as well. So I kind of made things fit together by having this sort of glowing look on the characters and shimmering. There's always a grid. What I've actually done in this screen is this is a 2.5D view. I'll talk through that more in due course. You have puzzles and you can go through the light gates. There's actually a light gate visible there. And here you've got one of the mini games, which is kind of a reverse breakout. You have to defend your soul from a character who's trying to take it from you. If you win, you get some energy you can use to fight the Guardians as you go through the light gates and progress through the game. You actually get to this game through a light gate as well. As you do this, some of the mini games you have to collect objects and power-ups, or just progress through the game itself, avoiding the adversaries which move around the maze. Yeah, you can collect lives in here as well. This is like a conversation view, so you've got like a character you can talk to, make choices. It might give you stuff, it might let you go somewhere, it might fight you. There's a little programming language behind that, and we'll look at that in a moment. Again, you can see we've got this sort of glowing sort of look to everything. And this is a combat view where the thing fires energy at you, and you can fire energy back at it. To try to beat it, essentially. So that's what's called a Guardian. But there are other characters there as well that came, we talked about in the previous development blog, such as Webster, who was used. Now, my daughter did some animation cycles for me, which was great. Or half cycles. There's like an outline. They're actually like red on white, and they're quite large. This means that I used them as a kind of start point. I drew the animations large, which worked out better because when I drew this using like an airbrush, I could shrink it down in the game. You've got the death cycle on the left. You can see this is one of the zoomed in cycles for the game. There's actually some of the principles of animation there with a hood going up and down. This death cycle plays slightly slower in the game. This is actually a GIF making tool that came with Paint Pro, and I tend to use that for testing my animation cycles. Here we've got a shimmer. I went to the Pixel Bunker in Milton Keynes recently, and I liked how the CRTs sort of shimmered. I wanted to reflect some of the characteristics of the CRTs into the game, in the backgrounds, and also in these characters. So I just used the animation wizard in Just Paint Pro companion tool here, and I've got a character or graphic here which I was thinking of a bacterium absorbing your energy once you've been sucked into the maze, because this is like you get sucked in here from a contaminated artifact, a tape that plays a haunted recording, sucks you into this dimension. These things sort of wander around and try to consume your energy, and they kind of look like a bacteria with a little sort of like pulsating thing going on. So white is the mask colour here, and they're actually like transparent in the game. But yes, I find it's a very effective way to test my animation cycles. This is a game I wrote when I was 13. I've not released it anywhere, and I used it as the inspiration for defend mode. Basically, this little thing tries to get to the line at the top, and you're supposed to block it, kind of like a reverse breakout, essentially. And it's written in the teletext mode 7 of the Using Micro. This was a sort of simple maze game I did when I was 14. I actually used the graphics from this. I just did a screen grab, saved me redrawing all the tiles. You're a little, I don't know, face-like character which tries to capture some fruit that runs away from you and you're being chased by monsters. Doesn't make a lot of sense. I never actually released this one. There's about 4 of my games on bbcmicro.co.uk are out there in the emulators. Might possibly tweak these things and release them at some point. Possibly. But maybe I'll do that. I probably should, rather than just hanging on to them. Anyway, they've got some mushrooms here. It's an extra thing. So we'll look inside the game at the code. I want to share information on how I went about it. You'll see it's on the Pling store there. I've actually corrected the price straight after this video to $14.99. You hold down the Shift key on a RISC OS application. This is running on the Raspberry Pi, and you can go inside and see all the files. This is the level data. I always do a text file, and I just substitute the characters. Either they get sucked up into the game object array. If I mark these letters meaning the properties, J is your start position, M is one of the characters, G is the guardian that we saw earlier, which you talked through a light gate. The numbers 1, 2 are different light gate numbers. S is skull. You've got different wall graphics. Then what you've also got is mini games with the mazes. We saw that one briefly before, and similarly this has its own set of codes which get turned into graphics and objects. We've also got little sort of books in a way which describe the conversations you can have. So you've got page 1 here, and you've got the text you may remember from the previous screen. It goes to different pages, and you could do things and interact with you. So depending on what you choose, you could probably write a very simple game in this language. Anyway, it was very easy for me to metacode. The first one isn't that helpful. It just gives you a few hints on how to play, but it doesn't help you otherwise. Otherwise it'd be a short game, because that's a gate back to your home and out of the game. We've got game libraries here, such as the tiles library. This is in my development kit, and this basically manages that translation from those text files. You've got properties you can put on the letters, and it has routines to give you the sprite that corresponds to it, as well as loading the data off the disk and drawing the data on the screen. Although I don't use the drawing routine in this because I've got this not for the main game. I use it in the mini games for the simpler mazes that get drawn. I don't use it in the main game because it's 2.5D, which I'll come in talk about in more detail later. This is like my generic routines for the kit: error handling, sprite potlotting, and actually also 3D routines as well, which I put in there, which I'll release in an update, and my customers get that for free. When I port this to Windows and other platforms, these library files act like a translation layer, an abstraction layer away from the operating system. This is a mini games selector, which gets chosen through the light gates. It looks at which light gate you've selected, what level you're on, and then it selects which game you're playing. You've got the code for defend mode here, which is a rewrite. I didn't use any of the code from this game I wrote when I was 13 years old. I thought it's better to rewrite it from scratch, as it was quite simple to do. And underneath that you've got the maze game, which I adapted from my game kit demonstrations, called Sparky, and pretty small amount of code really, only a few hundred lines. And you've got like music, etc. in this directory, of course. The 3D game stuff, you've got the conversation. Here again, light gate, the numbers there, 49 being 1 of course, and in ASCII. You've got the fighting code here, which uses the 3D routines I mentioned a bit further down. You've got starting off the 2D routines, proc sprite put for example, and you've got 3D is initialized for a given object, and collision detections, animation. To put things in, I initialize a 3D object, and I can move it about, check for collisions, sprite collide 3D, etc. And yeah, it's quite a helpful selection of little routines, which I probably will expand and use again. And it says I've got an update pending to my development kit, so hopefully that will be really useful. And you've got 3D level draw, which is in that development kit as well, which takes all the objects and draws it. The conversation code further down was taken from the Haunted Tower Hotel. It knows what page it's on, and it runs the commands. And someone run command. It translates the text into a token, which you can then use. And many secrets in there if you look too closely at it, no doubt. This is the main entry point of the game. I always make a note of my donor games. Wouldn't hope I'm not reading that quickly. Oh, good. Starting from the bottom. So those little things there where it says LLRLL is used in defend mode. The character that attacks you as motion is not totally random. It's actually a series of randomly chained small programs. So it's a combination of logical behavior and randomized behavior. You've got sound effects, key definitions, and the stuff you find in every single one of my games. Present. You've got translation routines that set the properties on the objects we saw in the text file earlier, and what sprites they map to. So I've got things like, is it a tool, is it a bonus, does it block you? I've got save and load code, which is using the serialized pattern, which you can look up if you like. It's very straightforward, but I've used it on every single one of my save routines for about 9-10 years now. Probably exactly the same code, I should think, as well. I don't believe in reinventing the wheel, otherwise I never get time to make any more wheels. Pick up code, drop code. This routine draws all the objects. If something is a character, it marks the character. It will just draw all the objects out in a loop, and they all have momentum. So the code is generic. This bit of code doesn't really understand much about the objects and what they are. Particularly, it's configured by properties on the objects. I'm not sure if anyone who designed BBC Basic back in the early 80s thought you'd be doing properties in a bit mask. Maybe they did. Well, that's the control code that takes you from the light gates in there as well. The T49, 54, 57 goes to the mini game selector and moves you out the door. That's what the little addition there was. So 2.5D is a hybrid between like 3D code and 2D code, basically. And so it's got some slightly odd code in here. Basically, you've got so you draw the background first, and then you put everything into buckets like a bucket sort, and you just draw out each Y position out in turn. Then all the animated characters and all the walls, and anything like trees, you can walk behind them because they're drawn all in the correct order. You sort them first, then you draw them in order. So if you're doing 3D, do the same with depth, but if you're doing 2.5D, the same with height. So I draw, I think, from the top down, so I can draw things in front of it going down. You'll see when I walk behind a wall, it's beneath you. So that's basically how it works. And the other thing I tried to do in here, which I'll talk about in a minute, is it's related to that. This is where we've got the examine code that prints out what the objects are, and things we drop from the things you're holding. This is exactly the same code as in the Haunted Tower Hotel. Various rule implementations to search and replace objects if you have something like a key that opens a door. And the die routine we've got there, which just runs an animation sequence. The main game loop is coming up, I think. It prints out all the status information, what zone you're in. I'm planning to add a couple more zones in due course, but the game's a reasonable size. But when I do the port over to Windows Linux, I'll expand it a little more, and then backport that, I should think. So this bit here, there was just drawing the grid in the 2.5D games in different colours, so it's trying to simulate the effects you get in a CRT with lack of colour stability. It looks quite attractive, makes it less solid, basically. And here are some rules here for doing the 2.5D game. You've got K for key, ampersand signifies a door. So if you have the key and you used it near an ampersand, it will make it disappear by replacing it with nothing. But you can turn things into other objects. you can use things in combination, and you can have ranges in terms of where it's effective, whether it's single object replaces or throughout the entire map, all sorts of stuff like that, really. And yeah, so I'm just showing here what I can type. I think I'm still sleep deprived, to be honest. This shows with a key. Uppercase K is I think stone or something. Anyway, that's the door there, and the key above it. So those two things have a relationship. Pretty straightforward. That's where some of the logic is. And yeah, some of it's in other places, basically, because you've got effectively 4 games in one: the 2.5D game, conversations, combats, mini games, etc. So yeah, you've got things that add objects in. I've got some old comments I really should remove here, which related to the donor game. The main donor game was amazing, but it was sort of fused with its original game that I based it on, which was the Haunted Tower Hotel. Probably that went back to Escape the Arcade, and goodness knows. There's lots of kind of borrowed and reused patterns, but they all tend to have the same form, essentially. There's probably 1 or 2 bits of dead code here. This is the cutscene handler, which has got common code, which you'll see when the game players talk through. We've got skip and continue, and that there's no point in having everything too decomposed, given this is just a relatively small thing. I've learned if you over decompose things, you just make them very big, unless there's a good reason to do it, like it's a large and sophisticated thing. This is probably only about like maybe 4,000 lines. I don't think 4,000 or 5,000 lines is that big, not counting some of my own custom languages. This is the instructions screen here, and right the way to the top. So not huge. That was really quick. But if we were to go through it slowly, we'd be here for hours talking about it. So this is the gameplay. So as a separate video, which has been out a little while, when I released the game into the store, and that one has a talk through the gameplay, a demonstration of the gameplay. I'm going to talk through it now. Sorry. So this is a little title logo, and you've got the grid here, where it's intended to be slightly mocking, slightly silly. The idea is that you should watch old films, listen to old recordings. This is the sense I had with this old tape. It's almost like it had been contaminated by some sort of entity, a bit like The Ring. Some of it was quite scary and not pleasant to listen to. But yeah, so you can start the game and go straight to the intro scene. I did originally have this in one of the episodes as a voice experiment, but I think that could be a bit too much, so I just wrote out the words. That's the picture of the tape recorder, actually playing the actual tape. And then I have, because it's haunted, I make it a negative image, because that's what they always used to do in Doctor Who in the 1960s. And it's cheap, so I could do that and just run an animation here based on a video clip. I tried hand drawing this, I didn't have time to make it look good, so this is far better, I thought. This is one of the images I constructed by messing around with kaleidoscopes, basically simulating a tunnel which you're falling backwards into. I thought it looked quite reasonable. This is just done with triple buffering, cycling without clearing the frames, creating a moving effect. This is the 2.5D view. Note that the background lines are green or disappear, or they're blue. I can walk behind the tree, or I can walk in front of it since it's 2.5D. The path is always in the background. And this is a Guardian, who's not particularly helpful. You can talk to him, he doesn't really do much apart from give you some advice. Say look in the mini games for objects, but he won't let you through, and he won't fight you either. So I got a hint, and you can thank him and he lets you go. The bacteria are wandering around, so rather than very chatty as a him, someone said looked like badly drawn boy. He's more of a sort of abstract glowing character. There's a skull. A few people have been here before, evidently having a tough journey. You've got another object up here. which is a computer tape, or computer disc rather. And then you've got a few of these power-ups which you can collect. You're not bound to have to get them in the games, and saving regularly is generally a good idea. So in this game you have health points rather than lives. You terminate immediately and die, so that's more kind of a more modern thing. Also the music's contextual, so as we go into the mini games and cutscenes, we basically have changes of themes. This character on the left was drawn with the warp brush, which I was messing around with. I quite enjoyed layering him up. He seems to want to help you, but maybe not. He wants your soul, I think. So, lovely. And you've got a sort of ready thing. This is deliberately slightly pixelated, so it's a mini game. You're playing in 2.5D. I wanted to play around with mini games as a concept for a while. He's basically trying to reach your soul. I find this quite stressful but fun. Because I don't know quite what he's going to do. But yeah, it's quite good fun. I changed, there's one update I did after this before I released it to the store, where I just made the speed slightly more regular, because it was occasionally going a little too quick. So I got that down to a proper steady frame rate. Frame rate is very based on which minigame you're in. But it just knocks out the blocks, and if it gets through both layers of blocks, it reaches your soul. Note again, because it's running these little programs one after the other, and runs a fixed number of steps in each program, that's why it's doing like multiple attempts to stab at one point, and also why it pauses, and why it might go and try to fool you as to where it's going to go by running off somewhere and perhaps running back. So I try to encode strategies in there rather than just being random. If it was purely random, I don't think it would have been particularly good. That's how I designed it back in 1987 originally, although my implementation doesn't work as well as this. I think it's not as well calibrated. So you have your hoverboard, and you're just blocking him from reaching your soul. Makes perfect sense, honestly. Anyway, I've won this deliberately on this particular run. You get 16 light orbs, and Morgoth is not especially happy. I thought it was funny calling him Morgoth since he looks like that. It doesn't really look like a serious character. But the name is supposed to sound, I don't know, gothic, maybe, not sure. Anyway, so you go behind the wall, you see, it's 2.5D, and in front of the wall. Even though you don't want to think too hard about 2.5D, because you're sort of walking possibly diagonally. Anyway, it makes a change to have different perspectives, so not every game is the same. And you can use this key card to unlock a bit of the room, a bit of the maze, the zone, and get rid of those sort of energy fields. And pick up a pickaxe, which if you look closely and think carefully, you've realised I've used several times since Legends of Magic, which I released in 2015. I think I've come a long way since then, in terms of doing quite a lot of this. Anyway, I'm ready now to have a go at going through another light gate, and this one's a bit more keen on fighting you. You can mock him if you wish. At which point he says, "Okay then, have a fight with me. Let the games begin." Now one of the things that's difficult with this is trying to calibrate it, because it doesn't want to be too hard or too easy, otherwise it's frustrating. So I kind of adjusted this. You use the mouse to control it, that gives you the option of having rapid response, otherwise it can be a bit frustrating if you're trying to move out of the way in this space. These little wireframe blocks coming towards you. Lives down to 2, so it can be quite expensive, and then you can zoom through to the other side if you hit him enough times. Another light gate there and an enclosed space, so I can blast my way through the wall, through the stone. And save it. we head off to another light gate. And here we are, now in proper 2D. Try and grab some lives. When they've gone, they don't come back. You don't come back in here and it resets or anything. So that's another light orb. And we're trying to get the key. And we've lost a health point. Another health point is gone. And then you're absorbed by the grid. And that sound effect was done on a mountain the size there, and then time stretched and layered and forwards, backwards, all sorts of stuff. Basically. To make it. So I didn't use these sort of like sound effects I built up in episode 2, I think. I decided I was going more for this kind of feel rather than it being sort of sinister things coming towards you and the screen fading like you might have in Little Nightmares. I went for a different kind of a feel to it. Slightly more successful second attempt. Yes, you do get your score back. Don't know why I do that, but well, I will for now. There we get some more light orbs, and then notice the maze graphics are the same as that old 1980s basic game that I shared, which I wrote when I was 14, because they are. The screen grabs are basically being compiled together here, with deliberate slight distortions and blurring. So there we go. Near the end now, I think, of this demonstration. So I'm stalling for time, really. There you can see these things follow you fairly effectively along until you meet your inevitable demise. Thanks for watching, and I hope that you find it useful. There's another episode coming up, which is episode 6, and that episode will be for showing how I'm porting it to other platforms, building it out, because I think it has probably would fit quite well, would have a life just outside of the Raspberry Pi RISC-OS stuff that I target quite a bit. I'm working on a couple more games for that. There's about 3 or 4 in the pipeline for RISC-OS, but this particular one will continue to be developed and will end up hopefully maybe via a publisher, or otherwise on itch.io, Steam, or wherever it fits well. Thanks for watching, and I hope you liked it. Thanks, bye.